I were just bantering back and forth. All right, I want to call the April 26th, I almost said the March 22nd, the April 26th, 2018 meeting to order. First thing I want to go through is the prior minutes from March 22nd. Everyone has seen them? Does somebody want to make a motion?
I move we approve the minutes of March 22nd.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Next, we have warrant Article 45. We have two gentlemen here.
Yep, how are you this evening?
Good. If you want to both come up and introduce yourself.
Barry CO, 12 Deer Path Circle.
Jack Cooney, 425 Branch Street.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to the committee today. We appreciate it. Based on U.S. averages, Mansfield alone uses and discards 20,000 plastic bags each and every day.
Did you give us
I'll have a handout for you.
after?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, if that's okay.
Do you
Because
think it's better to give it to us before and we can kind of listen to you and like link
it's,
back to it?
it's a little bit different, so I just wanted to give you some of the intro, and then I'm going to hand it to you. Just 1 second. I just have a quick intro I just wanted to give, if that's all right. Thank you. So of those 20,000 bags that we in Mansfield alone use and discard every day, they have an average life of only 15 minutes. And between 95 and 99% of those are not recycled. Because of that, they find their ways into the places where we don't want them. It's our neighborhoods, our drainage systems, our parks, our neighborhoods, our waterways, and our landfills. Plastic bags contribute to the costs in our town in multiple ways, including contaminating the recycling stream, collecting and disposing of bag costs, the removing of bags from streets and storm drains, as well as processing in landfills. Due to these potential savings to our town, our group would like to ask for the Finance Committee's support of Article 45. If it pleases the committee, we're here to answer any questions. We can give you a summary of the article itself, or if you prefer, just answer questions.
Start with Yogan, who I didn't think was going to be here tonight.
Sorry about that.
Caught you off
I
guard.
didn't have any
All
questions.
right, we'll start with Brian then.
Can you just run down the cost estimates in terms of where does the town find savings? And then do you guys have projections for how much it might cost business, presuming they've got to either swap out to, I think they can go to a thicker bag, or they can go to paper bags or anything like that, just so we understand the implications for both sides of things.
Sorry. Need to eliminate paper, too. So while there have been a number of analyses that are done to try and calculate, it's very difficult to draw a direct correlation to the town. As you start to look at the cost for us to do our recycling, part of those costs are driven up because plastic bags shut down those recycling plants on a regular basis, right? So that directly contributes back to us. Cleaning up storm drains, DPW work to do that, right? Again, very difficult to quantify, but I think if you step back, you go, there are savings there. It's just very difficult to quantify what those savings would be. And we don't want to use false numbers. San Francisco did an estimate that came back, and then based on those 4 areas that I outlined, they came up with a number that based on all of their numbers, it was 17 cents per plastic bag. Now, I think that actually comes out a little bit high for us because that's well over $1 million based on the 20,000 for us on an annual basis. So I would not go so far as to say that those are the correct projections, but I think suffices to say, based on the number of analyses that have been done, we should expect to see some form of savings, just very difficult to quantify.
And then is there an offset, because presumably people would go to paper?
Yeah,
or
so
something, and so does that add to kind of?
Sure. So the article is designed to encourage recycling, and not recycling, using reusable bags. And while we held back on, some towns have put in place fees and other restrictions for paper bags as well. The way the article is presented here, we held off on that to try to move the needle forward for the town, dealing with the most costly and environmentally impactful side of that equation, and held off on adding any kind of fees or anything like that on paper bags. And instead, there are organizations that we're working with, such as Keep Mansfield Beautiful, that have already offered to, and that we're working with to provide some number of free recyclable bags to the food pantry and the Council on Aging. Paper bags don't have the same impact even when they are used for polluting, as plastic bags do, because they tend to decompose very, very quickly. So they solve the problem on their own very fast, whereas plastic bags do not. They last hundreds of years.
John,
What is there a cost or burden on the retailer?
So the,
For that page, do you have any idea?
So there is a cost difference between paper and plastic, if you do it that way. But again, our focus has been on trying to drive up the use of reusable bags. The use of reusable bag increase would drive down overall costs for vendors. However, if it's just a one-for-one comparison, the paper bags are more expensive than plastic bags.
But what is the cost to the retailer at the end of the day? How much more does it cost them to operate in Mansfield?
So again, it depends on what assumptions you make. If you make assumptions that the reusable bags will drive down the need for them to carry as many bags and use as many bags on a daily basis, then the cost overall goes down. If you made an assumption that all people did was make a one-for-one swap for plastic for paper, then it goes up, it's about a 2x cost.
Has anybody endorsed it from the retail side?
So we have met with the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce had great input into the process. They appreciated that we tried to make accommodations in there, such as the long transition time, 6 months, 12 months, depending on the size of the business, with the health agent ability to extend up to another 6 months with petitions from either one of those groups. Obviously, they're very concerned about any costs, but I think their opinion, this was, our meeting with them was Tuesday morning of this week. But the general consensus was they felt that it was coming, they felt that there was generally positive things, and that they took a neutral stance overall.
One last question. Are any of the surrounding towns around Mansfield doing this already?
Not the directly connected ones. We're the first one in our area, but there are 64 towns and cities in Massachusetts that have already passed, the most of which have already implemented that. Ours is based on, which is being used in many different places, but it's very similar to the town of Wellesley, which passed in 2016.
I guess my only concern would be, I mean, I think it's great we clean up the environment, and I'm all for that. But, you know, would we lose any kinds of businesses or have moved them to surrounding towns that haven't done this yet?
Yep.
Where they may feel constrained coming here and may have added costs to them. Has anybody looked at that?
So it came up, actually, at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and their general consensus was they didn't feel that this was of significance, and either to deter business from coming here, nor to encourage buyers, like consumers, to go elsewhere. Because again, the consumers aren't affected, they have a $0 alternative, and the vendors they felt it was nominal. Again, they're very sensitive to any cost increases, and that part of the equation, that wasn't their favorite part of the equation, but they didn't feel that it was overwhelming.
I think the state has 4 or 5 bills floating to do a statewide.
Well, I
ban as
understand
well,
it's
so-
statewide, but when you do it town by town, all of a sudden.
All I'm saying is that there's a chance within the next year or two, Mass could just say,
Right.
great to see the town's doing this,
Yeah.
but we're going to do this.
His point is competition.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just had one quick question before Scott. Fines collected, where do they go?
It would go to the general fund.
General fund?
You had commented, the impact of the town in recycling. It was my understanding that our current vendor has a problem. If these things are in the recycling and the machinery jams up, that we do get charged or we're held responsible for that?
Yes.
So based on the conduct of our citizens, to the extent people put these in recycling, we are potentially raising our costs. As if a lot of them are in there, the machine jams, and then we hear about it from our vendor. It's in our contract.
Yes.
You all set?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, like, when I go shopping, on almost every grocery store I go into, like paper or plastic, they almost all have reusable bags, typically with their own logo on them, that they're selling and promoting. So they do seem to be on board with this and realize it's coming and try to take a sort of a branding tactic to say, hey, a couple of bucks, buy our bag and keep using it. It's got their name all over it.
Yeah, the larger stores are already adapting because, again, 64 towns have passed it, Massachusetts alone. We've accounted for a 6-month transition for them because they are already in the process of doing this. For the small businesses, the way the article is written, there's a 12-month so that they have a longer time because, again, it's a little bit newer for them. Let them work down their inventory. Both businesses work down their inventory, but the smaller businesses, give them a little more leeway in the process.
Thank you.
Yogan, anything?
I actually would just add that I actually lived in Europe for 3.5 years when they implemented something very similar, and it was remarkably successful. The one difference in the way that they implemented it was they had a tax on plastic bags. So if a client or a customer was coming into a business and they needed a plastic bag for a few things they couldn't juggle, you could pay, I think it was 17 euro cent, and then get a plastic bag. So that was very effective in changing behavioral patterns for consumers. This is, of course, a little bit different version of that, where you're eliminating it, but allowing the paper bag version. And so I actually think, based on the costs that we could incur, or save, I should say, by moving to paper only, and then just from me seeing it rolled out firsthand, it was tremendously effective, and I think people were actually really happy with it in the end. The one question I do have for you is, so if I go shopping at Market Basket in whatever it is, East Bridgewater, I can still get paper bags and bring them to Mansfield and recycle them here, or how would that work, I guess?
Yeah, so I think our recycling, process covers all of that, right? So it doesn't pay, so that's all fine in our bins. And in fact, the way that the current bill article is written is it does also increase the recyclable content standard for those paper bags as well. So there are some requirements in there to, again, continue to move, because some stores were producing paper bags that actually weren't recyclable for a number of reasons, right? Between handles that were made of certain types of string and things of that nature caused problems in the recycling process. So there's ways around that, but you just have to make those. So that's actually why that's part of that. So we kept away the fees, but kept in the portions that require that recyclable content and 100% recyclability.
I would just encourage you to clarify that on here. I didn't see it in here, and I think it might be a little confusing. It's such a simple concept, but like
Yep,
for
to make sure.
people who shop in other towns, will they still be able to recycle, if they
Great,
wanted to?
I'll add that in. Thank you.
Okay, this is not a comment specifically on the content of the article. We typically make a determination based on a financial analysis. That's how we vote on on whether we support or not support an article, or we stay neutral. So in order really to vote an article like yours, my recommendation would be that you get information, from, if it doesn't pass this time and you want to come back and use it, use a financial argument, I would get information from the DPW, water and sewer, garbage and recycling, about what their estimated costs are, because whether it's stuck in the sewer grates or whether they're picking it up around town, and get them to kind of give you a ballpark.
Yep.
I know it's the first I heard that the machines get jammed and we get charged back for them,
Yep.
but there's obviously a number associated with that. And then get an endorsement from the Chamber of Commerce on that, because at the same time, we don't want to impact small businesses. And as you said, they may endorse it and they may be fine with it. But in order for us to, typically, when we make a recommendation, it's based on, the town will save X
Sure.
if they go to this.
Yep.
Not that it's not a good idea, not that.
No, I understand.
Empirically, we know it will save money.
Yep.
But it's easier for us on the finance committee to look at something and say, and I'm making, this saves us $100,000 a year in the machine clogging up and DPW, and then we can vote it based on a financial analysis.
Here's a question for you, John. I mean, we get charged when this happens. I assume when these events occur and we get charged, information comes to us from the vendor, you see it. Do we happen to, would we have any clue, or how difficult would it be to come up with, over the past couple of years, how many charges has the town incurred because of this?
I would think the DPW department would have that information.
Okay.
Usually, on a citizen's petition, we don't, get
you
into
don't,
it
but
at
you could
all.
ask-
But it's public information
But they
that
could
we
ask,
can
but they could
provide.
ask for that information, they would
They
get it.
could
Yes.
basically call Lee or just call the DPW
Yeah.
and mention, because, and the thing is, even if this passes, well, people could go shop in other towns, bring the plastic bags, they could still throw them in, we could still have the charges. But if we knew that, hey, we've paid X per year for the past few years, it's cost us, here is a chance to at least reduce that, then that's certain information. It's not
my point,
precise,
right.
but it's saying, here's the
Yep.
direction we're going. And by the way, we see what this is costing us because people do this. So
Yep.
that might be an avenue where some information could be acquired relatively quickly.
Yeah, that's helpful. I can see it won't help here, but it would help for the town meeting. So am I correct in assuming then that the finance committee would take a neutral position on this petition?
I can bring it to him. I don't think it meets the criteria for us to even vote it, but somebody,
Well, the only thing I was going to say is
Can
if
make a
you can
motion.
get the information, we could always vote it before town meeting, if we
Yeah,
meet again.
and
So
that's
I
great.
would just recommend you get it in that way.
Yep, that's
instead
what
of
I'll
saying
do.
Neutral.
Yeah,
Yep,
if you
I mean,
have-
there's enough results out there as far as what it's 70 to 80% reduction in plastic bags
Right,
once the
but-
bans have gone in place.
right,
And I
but
can
what
get
we
the
need to
data
do
from
is,
the,
you need to come back, and you need to come back with, I spoke to
Yeah,
Lee Azaner at the DPW, and here's a note from him, or an email saying that over the last 5 years, it's cost us an average of
Yep.
$50,000 a year. I spoke with so-and-so at Water and Sewer.
Yep.
They told us that on average, they
Cost
spend,
this and-
200 man-hours a year picking up garbage out of the sewer stream at an average rate of $150 an hour.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, if you put some numbers around it, that way we could take
Yep.
an official position.
But they have to be real
Straightforward
numbers.
enough.
It can't be like,
Yep.
each bag's worth 7.5 cents, and, a PhD at Stanford did this analysis, and we'll save $1 million in recycle. It's got to be, this is when we should be able to have actual costs somewhere, especially since
Yes.
John said that we do get charged for it.
Yeah, I can go back to
So
Lee and I can
that
see
would
what
be-
information
And
I
you
can
have
get.
time, because meeting's not till the 15th, so you have time to even shoot us an email
Yep.
with the summary. and
Yep, will do.
take a
I'll
position.
follow back up on that and we'll definitely get you the information.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's very powerful information, because
Yes.
even to say the Finance Committee has looked at it, said, we've incurred these costs over there because these things have been there. Even without an endorsement, we can say, hey, here is this information that people can consider.
Yep, that would be great. Yep, I'll take that action for sure.
You have my email since we
Yes,
connected,
Brian.
so just send it back to me, and I'll distribute it out to the
Will
group
do.
once it comes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Nope, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I hope this doesn't include Ziploc bags.
It's just those little light things. Ziplocs are robust enough that they won't. It's these light things that the machinery just freaks out over.
So we really get charged for that?
Yeah, it jams it.
Yeah, I don't think it's $50,000 by any stretch, but there is,
Okay.
there is a cost. And I don't know off the top of my head,
All
so I'd
right,
rather
so-
not say if I don't know.
So let's start, why don't we do this? We're supposed to talk about the warrant articles, and that includes the budget. So let's go back to where we ended. I think, let's do CIP update and warrant articles together, because part of the warrant articles is CIP. So I think we voted, we approved the warrant articles based on the funding mechanism that was going to be used.
CIP.
For CIP, excuse me, for CIP. So at the time last week, 2 weeks ago, there were 5 items, I believe, right? 5 items. And the question was, there was a question about whether they're being bonded, free cash, et cetera. So we were waiting for an analysis on that to see what the funding source would be. I guess one of the selectmen was concerned about, is it $300,000, is it $225, is it $325? Trying to set guardrails on both sides. So I don't know which doc.
Yeah, I thought Mr. Dumas was going to be here, but since he isn't, I'm going to try to, I'll
Okay.
try to explain what happened. So there were,
So what page, what do you have?
it's the capital plan from last week.
Okay.
It's not a handout, that stayed the same.
Okay, okay.
His plan is to, or our plan is to take the Plymouth Street Fire Building improvements of $660,000, the Memorial Hall building improvements of $360,000, and the Engine 4 replacement of $660,000 for a total of $1.68 million. That stuff is going to just be short-term borrowed, and we'll go into when we go into the motions here, I can point that out. It'll be short-term borrowed with the idea that in the fall, when we have a fall town meeting and the new free cash is certified, we'll pay those off completely with free cash from the fall, at the fall town meeting. So 1.68 of that won't be bonded at all.
So why did, with interest rates going up, why did we there's a school of thought out there right now, and a lot of large companies are doing it. They're taking bonds now for cash purposes, knowing that the interest rates are going to continue to increase. So this means that next year's projects, but basically, we're doing 2 years of CIP, basically.
Yes.
Because we're taking next year's free cash. Was there an analysis done saying, we project because we're going to have, at some point, if we're going to use the free cash next year, that means really any capital projects for next year would have to be bonded. in order to pay for them.
Well, and you were there last night,
Yes.
so you can,
Yeah, I can, and actually,
Go
the
ahead.
the plan was.
I'll start over here with Yogan after you, but go ahead.
The plan for next year is to actually not borrow at all, is to, and in fact, even for the roads, it would be the following year, kick that whole program back in again. And I think Kevin wants to follow this pattern of when free cash is certified, being able to go and do it then. So we're shifting things over, and we're also shifting the work we're doing a little bit.
So we're accelerating the use of what we had before, but our the number of capital projects haven't changed.
Right.
I'm just wondering why, in a rising rate environment, we wouldn't take advantage of a lower rate now and use the cash as the rates rise 2 to 3 years from now.
Now, I can't answer that, you can,
well, yeah, I mean, the debt level increase, the increase in the debt of, I don't have it in front of me, but something like 300,000. or
300,000, correct.
Something like that.
Yes.
That was too much for the budget to bear in fiscal year '20, so we have to try to eliminate as much as we can. If we were to borrow these things, it was an additional 300,000 or so, and that was a bite into the budget that we couldn't handle. So what we're thinking is to use the free cash in order to, take that bite away in essence. We're not borrowing these
Right,
things.
so we've pretty much maxed out stabilization, correct? So next year, 250 that was normally going to stabilization would free up, correct?
Yes.
And I thought that this debt was going to fall into that slot for this year. My concern is, I don't want to end up in a situation 2 or 3 years from now, and I'm not saying, I just want you to answer the question. 2 or 3 years from now, where all of a sudden, we need $5 million, and we're taking a loan, and it's at 600 basis points instead of 300, or it's at, 800, instead. I just worry about that. We do have some capacity in the budget versus taking it now and then using free cash as the interest rates rise.
Ms. Dumas wanted to do this mechanism
Okay.
to get these things funded, and in fiscal year '20, not do any long-term borrowing, and try to do as much roads as we possibly can with, extra free cash and other one-time money that we might get.
So they won't take the typical $2 million road
Right,
bond either?
This is the last year of the 5-year,
Right, but I thought there was discussions about that being extended or a new plan being put in place.
well, yes, a new plan would be put in place, but not for 20.
Not
It
for
would be
20.
the following year, refire the
So while
program.
rates are lower, we're going to not take it, we're going to wait for rates to rise and then start borrowing?
Well,
I mean,
it-
is that
I
basically?
think the argument wasn't in terms of rates, it was in terms of what the budget looks like, and it was just, budgetary reasons to avoid the borrowing this year.
Yes.
Or to avoid additional borrowings in 2020, just for budgetary constraints.
I mean, what are the rates going to be in fiscal year '20? We're
Higher.
all assuming
Higher
it's
than they
going
are
to.
today.
Well,
I'll put money down on that fact.
okay.
It's anybody's guess.
I think they're going higher.
But put it this way, we, a couple of years ago, locked in the first 2 rounds, last year, the round of, what's the interest rate today versus a year ago? And we took it.
That's correct. They have
What was
risen
it, what is
since
it
then.
today versus 2 years ago?
That's correct.
And wasn't the whole theory we accelerated the second round of borrowing to get in at the earlier rates?
Yes.
So now we're going against that. We're flipping our philosophy. a
I told you
little
we
bit.
were lucky, you said we're good, so which is it? You did, I have
let's
that
keep in
text, I
mind
have that
that-
text right
No,
here.
no,
The
Don't
size of
read
that
that text.
bond issue, we're sort of, we're not quite comparing apples and Buicks, but it is apples and oranges, because the size of that bond issue was much larger than the kinds of borrowings we're talking here.
No, agreed, I just want to make sure that whatever long-term plan we have, whether it's 3, 5, or 7 years, whether the rates go up a lot or not a lot, that we're making a conscious decision based, using that, we're looking at the budget, we're looking at the hole in the budget, we're looking at our capital needs, and we're looking at where the interest rates may or may not be. Now, you and I may disagree on this, but I thought the Fed said 4 rates, or economists are saying 4 increases in the
increases.
next 12 months,
They
right?
said 3.
3,
Close
4,
enough.
2, but my point is if
Increases.
Yeah.
So, I'll go, Yogan?
Yeah, no, I guess, the question of paying for it with the fall town meeting is always a little risky to me, too, if that's the strategy. I mean, this is the first year we're gonna have a fall town meeting in a while, right? I mean,
Well, there's
try.
not a lot of risk, because if it
Yeah.
doesn't
Can't guarantee
happen,
it.
you still have the
Right.
money. I mean,
yeah, then it just it goes
then
through as a loan
you
then at
just
that
wait till
point.
spring.
No, there is risk, though. There's risk that you're not doing the projects.
Oh, no, we're going to do the projects, because, I
Good.
mean, we're going to get a short-term authorization. To do it now, we have to have a source of funding. It would be a short-term authorization. The idea is, not actually take that money down, have the fall town meeting, get the free cash certified, and instead of actually borrowing the money, we would
I get it.
use the free cash.
So the idea is to drive people to fall town meeting by taking a 6-month short borrowing and telling people that if they're not there for the October meeting, that we run out of bonding?
Actually, it's not a
No, I'm being
6 month.
serious.
No,
I'm
it's not a
being-
6 month. We actually wouldn't even take it.
That's what you just said, yeah. and that-
We wouldn't
then
because-
That means you wouldn't do it then if you
Well,
didn't
no,
get a
they,
quorum
well,
in
they
the
could
fall.
get the project started. Don't forget, these projects couldn't even start till July 1.
No, but yes, my point. My point is what happens, I've been, before you graced us with your presence in the town, they had fall town meetings.
I
and-
remember we had,
But
we had several fall
Yeah, if
town
we
And
meetings.
it was
If we didn't
difficult to
have it,
get
we'd have
people
it
to go to them. So my question is, what happens at the fall town meeting if it doesn't get approved? What happens if we've already ordered the fire engine?
We have an authorization to borrow in the
Okay,
motions.
so they'll
So
go
the
to
Authorization
borrow
to
rather
borrow
than
if we
taking
have,
free cash.
if it.
Do the short term.
And what's the
no one
definition
sh-
of short term? 12 months, 18,
Anything
24?
less than 12 months.
Okay.
It's in essence a bond anticipation note.
All right, so you wouldn't have to get that until right before the delivery anyway, probably, right?
It depends on how long yeah, I mean, it would be, we could make it as long as.
No, but my point is, let's pretend that the roof didn't get fixed till October. That's 12 months from October, 11 months from October that the bond would, so you could push it into the next town meeting if you had spring town
We would
meeting.
ban it until we came to the next town.
Yeah, because my
meeting.
question is, if the fall town meeting doesn't get enough people to vote,
We could ban it till May.
yeah, okay.
And then, of course, that same $1.6 million would be there in free cash, and then we could, allocate appropriately.
Just general comment, I don't try to predict where interest rates will be 5 years from now. Directionally, I think they are going up, but I would just point to that they are at they're not at historical lows, but relative to historic norms, they are still relatively low, so it is still a good borrowing opportunity. That's the only thing I would say. And then I guess the other observation I'm just sort of coming around to, which you guys probably already know, because you've been on this committee longer than me and are probably wiser.
We're not, but go ahead.
The longer part, yeah.
We act like we are,
I'm
but
just thinking there is a little bit of wrong way risk in waiting for interest rates to go up as well, because that would be when your property values are simultaneously going down and it's more expensive to borrow. So given that potential risk, it does sort of tilt the scale in the side of borrowing more when rates are at below historical norms. That's all.
you've already had your say, and we'll be back to you in a moment.
If we didn't pay it off free cash, what would we do with the cash? Just put it in a reserve?
If we didn't
If we
pay-
went out and borrowed the money as some are suggesting?
As a long-term or a short-term? Long-term debt?
Long-term debt.
You could do more projects. You could knock out the next number of projects that equal that amount of
So we
money.
have, but where does the fund, where would the free cash go? It just stay into
Place it
reserve
always
fund
goes.
Dropped-
for
it would-
future?
We have
Where
to
will
put
we
it in
do
a
it?
reserve fund. It's in free cash. Free cash is free cash. It sits there forever.
So
if we
what
don't do anything
happens
with
is
it.
if you don't use free cash and you don't send it somewhere, we don't send it to stabilization, or it doesn't go to a project, it again would drop to free cash the following year. correct?
Every year you go
Well,
back to
I-
zero.
Here's my question. Is there a cost of keeping it, not utilizing it
No, it
versus
would be
going out and
utilized,
borrowing?
my assumption would be, you would bond what should be bonded.
No, yeah.
And then you would use the other free cash, I'm making up a number, Scott,
Mm-hmm.
15 other things are on that list. You would go down that list and do as many more capital projects that are behind.
So we still have some capital projects to do. even though-
Absolutely.
We have an abundance. We have a 5-year plan worth of capital projects still to do. We have plenty of capital projects. All this really is sort of a reach forward. The idea of going to fall town meeting is, instead of waiting to the spring to allocate that money, we can actually use it then because it's certified, but only a town meeting can use the money. Normally, we know what it is, like.
What are the risks, though, in pushing those projects out further by not?
Well, the cost
Well,
of
no,
construction
we're
is gonna go
actually,
up 4 or
we're
5%.
we're accelerating projects, right? We're doing projects now that normally we couldn't. We're
We
gonna try to finish
we
next
would've
door,
done it, we
finish
just would've
Primer
bonded them.
Street, the fire station.
Yeah.
And the big one, the thing that's really kicking this over is the $1.4 million that we are borrowing long-term to take care of the underpass. If that wasn't there, you could say, well, gee, all these things, that's less than $1.4 million we're talking here. But that's an amazing opportunity. If we borrow that $1.4 million, the federal government gives us $1.6 million.
Right.
So we're taking that borrowing, which is actually increasing our borrowing this year. Even though we're, about $1 million of it is going to go short-term and maybe not borrow at all, we're still going to, from a long-term perspective, be borrowing over $3 million But probably closer to 4, I think, John.
Yeah.
We take
You
that
got
out.
the 2 for the roads, you get the 1.6, John, for the 1.3 for the underpass, that's 3.3.
1.4, yeah,
Which is already, I mean, typically, we only borrow like a couple of million. We're already
Typically
borrowing this
Typically
year.
borrow 2 million.
Yeah, we're borrowing, better than $1.5 million more than we typically borrow. And we're also doing these projects, which, we've been kicking the can down the road on finishing that building and finishing Plymouth Street for years.
No one's, this is not an argument of the validity
Let me
validity
finish.
of what you have.
But it's not, the thing is, it's about a timing. Rather than say, well, gee, we're going to try to tackle them next year. Let's see if we have enough money to get to it.
No, we're saying bond
We're
it
start-
now.
we're saying do it now. Now, whether we go short-term or pay it off there, I mean, I think Kevin has paid he's looked at the budget and say, we'd rather not have that debt service, we'd rather use our money. But the fact is, we're accelerating CIP. We're doing things now that normally we would wait to do. So, yeah, we're actually getting ahead on our projects. The idea of being able to use certified cash and have a fall town meeting allows us to do CIP quicker, allows us to start the projects quicker.
I know, but all you're really doing is you're pulling it back, so next spring there'll be less money for CIP. I mean, so we
Unless
typically,
things that-
no, but we typically did CIP in the spring, we pull it back, that means.
You'll get your chance.
Go ahead.
No, how would you feel if rates remain neutral? What would you suggest at that point? If, say, rates didn't do anything in the next 2 years? What would you suggest as far as bonding versus using free cash? I mean, you're
What would I
assuming the rate, you're assuming, which is probably correct, rates are going up, let's take advantage of now and borrowing the money.
If they
But
were
if that wasn't
neutral?
the case,
Well, it's a couple of things you're looking at, right? Because I haven't really thought this through until just now, but, because it was just presented just
Right.
now, and these were gonna be bonded in before. Now we're basically pulling next year's CIP money into the fall. So at next spring town meeting, there'll be little to, there'll be obviously whatever, 1.4, whatever this equals, less so let's say, I think there's an estimate, we know we auctioned off some lots, we know we did some stuff. That's, say, what is it, what are these equal, John?
1.68.
So 1.7, let's just say. Let's say that free cash is 4 million, that leaves you 2.3. Scott says that the town manager doesn't want to bond the roads, that's 2 million, that leaves $300,000. So all we're doing is we're shifting 6 months, we're pulling the projects ahead 6 months, then next year, it'll be the same thing, because now you can only do that once. You follow me? It's like, you can only recognize revenue once, you can only pull the projects. So we're gonna we're gonna pull the CIP forward, but as we do that, there'll be, in the spring, your CIP will now go to fall, there really won't be much in the spring, if anything.
Yeah. And to the extent we can do that,
Not
is
that
we
I'm
just
against
start
it, I just wanna
earlier.
make sure we thought out the long-term 3 to 5 year strategy of this, it's not, I
I'm just trying
understand
to figure out what's driving the conversation, obviously.
well, it's a 300,
anticipation
what John's
of rates
saying.
going
And I
up.
think
No, what John's saying is that there's 2 things driving it. What triggered my brain was, okay, interest rates are going up,
Yeah.
should we try to do that and put John says that the town manager's concerned that next year's budget, that $300,000 would be an issue.
It's a budget capacity problem. I mean, we're flat on state aid, we're absolute max on local receipts. And we've got rising costs in all the costs that we've talked about. And it's just,
Basically, everything that we've seen for the last couple of years, and the lack
coming to
of,
fruition.
the lack of the taxes coming into the industrial, the areas that we had talked about. So it's basically. We're starting to feel it, and it's getting, and we talked about this, every year it gets, the funnel gets tighter and tighter and tighter. I'm not saying it's the wrong way to go, I just want to, part of our job as financial advisors, just make sure people think think about all the different options.
But really, I mean, what we're doing, if we didn't look at this and do it this way, you could say, well, gee, you could take a number of these projects, hey, we'll just shift them to next year, we'll have that free cash available, and we'll go ahead and do it next year, but then things wait, because what we worked on last fall was going to get voted on in May, can't even start till July 1. If you have a fall town meeting, if we can actually pull that off and make it happen, it's now been voted, it's in. We're going to work. We can go to work sooner. Now, weather can hold up some things, and some things you can't do, but again, the projects are in and the funding's certified, and
But
we're picking up
We're
steam.
going to approve, the projects, you're going to borrow, you're going to
Either
approve
way.
short-term borrowing. The projects can start. That's the whole
They
point.
start in June.
Right. It's just a question of the funding
Well,
source,
no,
but.
you can start
Right.
sooner.
Right.
No, if
That's
we
the
voted,
question.
no, whoa,
That's
whoa,
what
whoa.
I've been asking.
Well, no,
Brian,
I have
you're
a co-
wrong.
I have-
You're missing out. If we have a fall town, if we have certified cash and we have a fall town meeting,
Oh, so
we
you're not
go into
talking,
action.
he's not talking these bills, he's talking on a go-forward basis.
Okay, okay.
Once you pull it forward, not this fall, but next fall, because this fall you're paying stuff you already voted at this spring town meeting.
Right,
What
okay.
he's saying is, next fall,
Others.
you would be able to pull those projects.
Oh, okay, I was
Right.
confused
And
as to which
actually,
projects you were
and
talking
actually,
about.
Kevin, the things we might do, because again, free cash is going to be certified. Kevin wants to start doing the CIP rather than wait till October. He wants to start it over the summer. So whatever additional things we do, we might have additional projects. Again, to the extent we have capacity, right, our free cash is certified. We know it's there. We know we're not going to stabilization.
How are we doing on the outstanding projects?
On the SA, I haven't actually looked at the latest update you sent out, John.
It's,
But it's
one
we're
of,
making progress.
one of four on the ones that are funded by debt are completed. And I want to say 22 of 62, something like that, on the ones that are funded by free cash or
So we still have
other.
44 left,
Yeah.
okay.
But the fact is, everything we'd want to do, in addition, I mean, even if we only had, let's say, $1 million, so we're going to do $1 million worth of projects, we'd actually vote them in then. They wouldn't have to wait at that point, right, John? It's
No,
Once
you're
once
right.
they've been go to town meeting, we don't have to wait
All
until
right.
next July.
All right, so,
I got a couple issues. First is process-wise. When the town manager presented to us originally, he said, here's my plan. And now all of a sudden, we're seeing a shift of how it's going to be funded. And oh, by the way, we're also taking a year off from borrowing at rates that are lower than normal. So I have a process concern of what's the actual plan? It shifts, it keeps shifting. Is it going to shift again? Is he going to come up with a new one? There were certain promises made about presenting us the information so we can make some guidance. I haven't seen that, so I have a concern about that. And then to echo what others have said is, rates are at a historical low, why wouldn't we take advantage of that? And then there's a lot of reliance, and John, I've heard that there's not going to be an issue, a lot of reliance on a fall town meeting. And I haven't been to any, and you guys have more of a history on it than I do. If the fall is a lot of, why is everybody presuming we're definitely going to have the fall town meting?
Well, because we're going to put it out and try to.
Okay,
vote on it.
great. That doesn't mean
If it
people
doesn't-
show
If
up.
it doesn't happen, it doesn't kill this, though. We still end up at the same place. We might have to take out some short-term money until spring and then pay it off
Okay,
in
let's-
spring.
Let's break this into two buckets, okay? Bucket one is, when we left the meeting 2 weeks ago, which you were at, the idea was it was going to be a laddered bond approach, correct? To pay for this, okay. So people coming and having their head I'm going to see, I'm making this up, a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, this is going to go here, this is going to go here, this is going to go here. We're going to push the fire truck to the full because it's, whatever, and we're going to pay whatever it is. So now, the whole thing's just shifted. So the only question is, one, what changed? Like what changed in the last 2 weeks? Why wasn't that an issue before? The $300,000 wasn't an issue when that was first discussed. Now the $300,000 is an issue. So from a bigger perspective, is there something else in the budget or that you guys know that's coming that hasn't been,
Laid out.
that we don't have a copy of or we don't know about that's going to jam the budget? Or is it just the typical, receipts are up 2.7, expenses are up 3.5, and this is what it's going to look like in the next 2 or 3 years. So that's kind of I think that's kind of the question. We're shifting gears. We came, or at least I came to just see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that looks okay. Versus, okay, now we're going to a fall town meeting, we're pulling these things forward.
I think
we're
you're
doing-
exaggerating the change. The change is only one item that went from a long-term to short-term. The idea with the short-term, and Kevin had said this several times, was, hey, we can have a fall town meeting and we could actually pay it off and not borrow. He had said it several
No,
times. I don't think
I
people
know.
were paying attention, because 2 weeks ago, we first did it. That had come up, but no one seemed to think much about it or say much about it.
But the 300,000 wasn't an issue. All
Well-
of a sudden now it's a budgetary issue.
The 300,000 was always there, but yeah, it did turn into a budgetary issue, and I think we all witnessed that happening.
The town manager and I both were able to sit down on, what's today, Thursday, Tuesday, and plot out every debt payment coming in the out years and everything. and see where
I
we
know you
are.
used, when we used to have a lot of debt that was coming off, you used to provide that. Do you have a copy?
We just did it, yeah, so Tuesday, so I do have it, yeah. So, when we sat down, we talked about it, and we went over it, and that's the,
Can you get us a copy of that?
sure, of all the debt that we have coming.
But, let's
And
keep
when it
in
falls
mind,
off and all that
we're
stuff,
all
yeah.
aware the selectmen's input on the amount of debt, the amount of borrowing we're doing, and those borrowing costs. Those have been discussed. And, that did go before the selectmen. In fact, this whole program was before them last night, well, as you well know. And I think, even the concept was well-received on that level, too, about, taking this approach. But again, this approach still has us borrowing, again, a lot more than we did last year. It's just one element. It's like, we're not borrowing that much more. We're not borrowing, again, on top of
Well,
it.
it's a one-time, it's a state offset on a large.
We're going from like 2 to 3.5, pushing 4, rather than 2 to 5.
As you point out, one of the reasons we're borrowing more is we have this great opportunity from the state. It would be silly of us to turn down free
Well,
money.
again, you
And then
look
again,
at
the rates are-
opportunities, but at some
Okay.
point, you're right, you can't afford your opportunities.
Does anyone have anything, this is just gonna go round and round,
Yeah.
so does anybody have anything else of substance? All right, so, John, what else did you bring us?
So these were updated sheets. These are the motions as of today. They've not been fully vetted by town council yet, but this is
Before we get to that, I have
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I have a question for you. So one of the things we did at our last town meeting is we did vote to support CIP contingent on getting some of this information, and some of the funding information, having the guardrails.
You mean at
that
our
we have.
last meeting, right?
Yeah, the last meeting, well, April 12th, when we did that joint. Would it be appropriate for us to take back that approval and say, we just want to see the information and then revote it? Because again, I think there's a piece missing. There's information that John says he has that you work through that helps inform some of this.
Just the debt
Be-
projection?
Between the debt projection, and I think, when we had originally done this, we'd asked for some of the numbers, and Kevin said he was going to provide basically like a chart that says, okay, worst-case scenario if we borrow, best-case scenario if we do some with free cash, just something really simple. That was one of the things that we were told we were going to get, and I think why we said the vote was contingent on just having the numbers in front of us. Can we take back the vote of support and say, again, just want to see the numbers, and then we can reapprove?
Well, you can just leave it out
re-support
there until next Thursday and we get updated information.
Oh, are we
But right
busy?
now,
Are we
we're on record supporting it. We're on record supporting CIP.
Yeah, contingent upon,
Contingent, but we
the
haven't
funding.
seen anything.
yeah, so it's
Well, What
contingent.
aspect are we missing now? Let's be precise. In fact, since we've been sort of described how the funding's going to go and what they were looking to do, let's be precise with John. Exactly what information do we not have now?
Well, there's two pieces. One I've heard is the debt that's rolling off and the cost of the debt. You said what you just ran.
Actually, you know what, I see, if you look at,
We
the-
have
if you,
some of
if
that
you look
here.
at, if you look at the articles, if you go down the articles, you can see that they're actually, we could just not vote those 4 articles tonight and vote the rest of them, because it's capital improvements, fire station, capital improvements,
articles?
fire engine, 9M3, 9M1.
Do you want to just go, as we go through
Yeah.
them, you can decide? So maybe don't take well, I don't want to say what, maybe don't take a position on CIP as a whole, but as we come to the article, maybe you hold
Is there a
it.
number of CIP articles in here that are separate articles that we could
There are motions.
say that it's a transfer?
No, there's separate
of-
motions within the same article.
Right, there's one article and 12 motions, or
Right.
13 motions on.
So we can go to the ones that we don't have a problem with.
I thought I just saw the debt one. Did I see it last night? No, that wasn't last night. Hadn't you sent us one? Because I'd seen one with like, I saw an exhibit that showed all the exempt debt that was coming off. I thought it had some of the non-exempt.
We just did it Tuesday, unless,
I thought you'd sent something out, did you?
I don't know if I did or not. It's been a
Wait,
long week.
And maybe it got buried, but I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't remember seeing it.
Unless it came just to CIP. Would it have come maybe just to CIP?
Yeah.
No. I wouldn't think
I
so.
don't believe I've sent it out, because we just did it, so.
Okay. I thought I'd seen an exhibit that maybe it was just the,
All
exempt
right,
debt.
so for the new people, typically what we do is we go down the list and we vote the articles. We don't do the citizens petitions unless there's a financial, where are we on the, we'll get to the, did you bring the information on the marijuana article?
Yes.
Brian got it.
It was on top. Everybody should have had the copy. It
Okay.
says
All right,
Finance
so
Committee
let's,
Revenue Discussion. We want
so-
to just hit
You want
that
me to
when we
keep-
come to the,
No, yeah, why don't we just go down this list, because,
You want me to stop rolling on
Yeah.
on the motion? So, again, what I was saying before was, these haven't been approved by town council, but it's the latest date update. So there may be changes, but
So the selectmen voted this last night, though, right?
They voted to support Article 1. They didn't have these motions, 'cause I just. put
Okay.
them. They had a couple changes that I can go into as we get to them, but for Article 1, these other handouts are related to Article 1. There's a breakdown of all the money, where they are being paid from right now, and then a one-page thing that I've been using, and
Okay.
we can take a look at it if you
So,
want.
so Brian, what we typically do is we put together kind of what? We typically will put together, maybe better to show you this. We typically put together something that says Article 1. Okay, have you seen it before? And then it just basically says approve. And so then we just have it for town meeting, so we can look at that versus, so, all right?
So real quickly, for Article 1, on page 1 of the motions, that's where the money would be coming from. And then Article 1's the town budget. So I think we talked about state, I don't know if we talked about state aid or not. It's on this page 1. I just wanted, if we hadn't brought it up before.
No, why don't you touch base that
The,
the allocation that came through a few weeks ago really didn't do anything for us?
Right, actually, it was $36,000 less, the House's budget for the, as opposed to the governor's. So we had to maneuver some, do some cuts in order to come up with that.
Okay.
So for Article 1, the increase on the town is 0.74%, and the breakdown is, Article 1 continues on to the end of page 7.
Okay.
And there are some new things, I think we've talked about it before, with vehicle maintenance and town fuel as their own budgets. And I don't, if you want me to go into it, I can, that's on page 5, those are new. The one thing that the town manager would like to have, if you look on the back of page 7, even though we have everything as departments, in the past, what we've done is, each one of these numbered lines has been a limit. And that's been, in essence, a town meeting vote. So, for example, I'm just on page 2, and I'm picking one out of randomly. Finance Director, number 7A, Personal Services. There's 4 or 5 budgets in that Personal Services, but that vote of $240,534 is the number that can't be exceeded. So out of those 4 or 5 budgets that make that line, some can be under, some can be over, but as long as that amount isn't exceeded in the total, you're okay.
So you could shift within that area, just,
Right, so what, with the
So
new
that avoids those things when you come back and say that the DPW needs, $700 shifted
Right,
from.
and we'll go over that when we get to that article. But on page 7, what we're trying to say is if you know how the schools vote, the school vote is one number, and they can shift money anywhere as long as the aggregate number isn't surpassed. So page 7 is the actual votes. They're in bold there. These amounts are to be voted, and then we have a general government number, a public safety number. If you're familiar with the state coding system, all general governments, the departments.
This is the
start
first
with-
time we voted it this way, right?
Yes. This is, so in other words, any number that starts within the town coding system
Yep,
of
so
100.
basically, inside of those buckets, you can shift money around.
So if you go back to page 2 where it says general government, starting with town moderator, it would go to,
No, but my
The
point is,
bottom of
yeah, so
page-
you're pulling all those subsections up.
Yes.
And that's allowing us, so we don't have those midterm things where we have to shift from one department
we're
to.
still going to be broken, we're still on our budgets, if you want to know what the Conservation Commission's expenses are, it's still going to be broken
Right.
out budget-wise. But the actual vote, the amount that can't be exceeded, it would be these votes. And general governments are the town codes that start with 100, public safety is 200, town is 3, public works
Okay.
is 4, snow and ice has to be voted by itself, so that's why it has a number by itself. Again, human services, debt has to be voted by itself, and unclassified is insurance and employee benefits.
so John, so you'll
those-
be able to shift anything within the general government, you're breaking it out, but anything within the general government, you'd have the flexibility to shift it, to move
Yes,
it around,
and
as long as
I'll-
it's within that bucket.
Or in public safety or whatever,
Right,
in
but
those buckets.
Public safety can be shifted within public safety, general
Yep.
government, they
So-
can't mingle, but,
Right.
okay.
So it give us a little bit more flexibility, and what the town manager was very excited about the fact that we only have one town meeting a year, and what happens when something goes wrong. This kind of gives us a little bit more flexibility so that if something's going well in one area, we can, and something
fine.
bad happens in another area, we could do
I mean, we've
shifts.
talked about that for years, because
Yes.
we always end up doing these transfers because
Yes.
something happens in the employee benefits line, or somebody misses something, and they can't move it from this to that, even though within their department, they're still balanced, but they can't do it. So does somebody want to make a motion on the 42 million
And
forward?
every one of these other numbers will be tracked the way it's always been, it's just the vote will be that.
Does somebody want to make a motion on Article 1? You don't have to read the whole thing, you can just do the end number, that,
Scott normally does it.
I make a motion that we approve the amounts, amounts in Article 1 totaling up to $42,419,783.
I'll second.
any discussion for that? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Passes.
Okay,
1, 2, 3.
Article 2 is the school budget. Their increase over last year is 2.8%. Again, like I was saying earlier, that they have a one number that's voted, and they can push it and pull it anywhere they want to in order to, as long as they don't go over that amount.
I move we approve, or I guess recommend would be the better word, Article 2 in the amount of $50,442,599.
Second?
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Article,
6-0.
sorry, Article 3 is,
Yes. We don't do the citizens petitions. We do
Unless they
like
have
the
fiscal
first-
impact.
We do the first,
Isn't it like 20 some odd?
we do the first 20 pages.
This is
First
the-
19
this is
pages.
the
It
slow
goes
part.
quick.
I'm trying to move quickly. Article 3 is the electric budget for fiscal year 19. They're under different rules, and this is the wording that, it just says that they, they can,
They can use their
They can-
income to pay their expenses, right?
yeah, whatever they bring in, we can pay expenses.
I move we approve Article 3, the municipal electric department budget.
Second?
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Article 4 has 4 motions. It's for the enterprise funds for fiscal year 19. Motion 1 is water, motion 2 is sewer, motion 3 is airport, motion 4 is parking. And the parking includes the increase from $2 to $3 for residents, starting July 1.
Can I
We did move that.
talk about that? I'm sorry.
Let's just let him finish this, and before we make a
Well,
motion, we can...
before we make a motion on it.
Yeah, I agree.
We were getting some information on the parking as to the cost of that parking that was being charged, and we're supposed to look at that. We never came to that conclusion. We never, at least that I don't recall coming to any conclusion on it. There was when someone came in, she sent us the information.
Yeah, there was a
Said the
question.
cost was, I don't recall the cost, but it was like $2 for the parking space and $200 a year, and yet they were charging something greater than that. We never finished discussing that.
Oh, for the non-town-owned, for the
Right.
Turner lots, for
Right.
the,
Yeah, but this
Is that
isn't
part
about-
of this?
No.
This is- we pulled
We
that-
can't raise the fees on them, we can't touch their fees.
Yeah,
This
that's
is about
separate.
town parking, this is about resident parking.
Okay, so that doesn't include.
No, but
We
it...
can't.
but it was
We have
connected
no
to.
authority.
No, hold on. No,
I'm confused about which parking fees we're talking about.
Okay, so what happened is, in one of the meetings, we had asked, there was talk about raising the parking fee.
To
And then there was a
$3.
question about, well, what do these other people pay for yearly? And it's like $500 or $200 and like $6 a spot.
Yes.
So I think we had a couple comments on it. One comment that night was, probably before we charge people more money, we should probably fix the lots, like fix the cracks and make sure the lights work. Then people think they got something. And I think 2 was, if you're going to raise the the people who live here price from $2 to $3, then we should also look at these people who are charging $10 or $15 a day, and maybe instead of charging, what are those permits, $200 or $500? They're cheap that
It's just
way.
$200 a year, and then
Yeah.
if they're doing something new, then you can add on X amount per spaces, but only for that first year.
Right,
And
but that's-
we can't charge someone a parking permit of $200 here and then charge someone else a parking permit
No,
and
no, but my
$10,000.
point is but my point is I think some of the feedback, and we hear it at the train station sometimes, is, I can tell you right now, people will go ballistic, even though it's only $1, for a couple of reasons. One, there hasn't been repairs done there, but two is that as soon as people find out that these people are paying $200 once, and then $6 a space once, and someone else is paying $3 a day, and they're charging $10 a day for the parking, that's just not equitable. So it's like that was a question that wasn't answered, because there was a question about increasing fees. Remember about, like, did all the fees get looked at? And the parking fee was one of them. I don't think the loop
And
was closed.
I don't think we ever got it. They had mentioned the town fee going up, but it was never,
We got the
Solidified.
information from her, and we looked at it, but we never finished discussing it.
Well, because at the time, there was no discussion about the parking, because as of 2 weeks ago, the parking fee wasn't going up, correct?
No, I think it was the
What?
the $2 to $3 for the resident parking.
Yeah.
It was going to.
I don't think that was ever communicated to us.
Okay.
I thought that was in the fee information you had provided us previously, John.
Yeah, was it last night with the selectmen, we went over all the fees and,
No, last night I heard, it said it was going up.
Yeah.
But I thought in the last conversation we had, and when we were talking about this, it was discussed that that you were looking at, but I didn't know that it was built in. I'd have to go look at my notes.
okay.
I don't think it was ever clear that it had definitely been baked into the budget, that it was going up.
I know
And then I
one of
think-
the proposed fee changes you gave us.
It was sent to us on April 10th by Nancy Griffin,
And what was in there?
and what was in there was the commercial parking facility application, the commuter parking fees,
What did it show for computer marketing fees?
the computer marketing fees,
Commuter.
commuter parking. fees.
I just gave you a big number, it didn't say what per space, right?
No, it actually talked about all the different towns, what they were charging. Their
Yeah, I saw
resident-
that, right.
Yeah. Monthly rates.
And I have a handout, or actually, it was an email from Lee Azaniera, the DPW director. It says, "The commuter lots will be cleaned, weed whacked, sprayed for weeds, graded out potholed areas, and new signage will be added."
Will they paint the lines?
And we're
Right, yeah.
reviewing the Winthrop lot for paving improvements. And they were previously postponed, waiting for a final plan for the area behind the train station, so.
Did we get a copy of that?
Yeah, that was that the email response?
This is April 24th. What's today?
And we've provided
It's the
200,000 for improvements to the lots.
So,
I don't think we got that yet.
okay, so this is, so we've got 200,000 left over from, I think it was last year, and then we were putting another 200,000 in on, to do more. And we're just trying to get a plan together of where to use it. So that's where you're saying it's initially going to start. I'm sure there'll be more, but that's what I have.
Okay.
And then not, separate, the question about the other lots, I think one of the issues holding it back, and this is not the budget, is I think they just re-signed the contracts.
Yeah, they did. So this,
you can't-
so this issue, we're gonna have to, this is gonna be an issue that I'm taking notes here. This is an issue we'll have to tackle over the summer as to the equity of doing stuff like that, just the optics of it.
Right.
For how long when did they sign them, for how long?
They'll get signed this spring, right?
And for which contracts?
The Turner and,
Well, these-
It's a yearly permit.
right, but didn't they just get signed?
And it just got
Like,
signed, yeah.
a couple weeks ago, a month
Yes.
ago,
Uh,
recently?
I
Yeah,
think it
okay,
was,
so, okay.
Yes.
So we need to,
Yeah, wait till we look.
I just don't know why, if we were in the process of discussing fees, why those were overlooked, so, okay.
But, I mean, if we're talking about, people going ballistic from going from 2 to 3, I think we already know that the cost of having those is more than $2. So the $2 per
No,
car.
Nobody, at least my impression is not that it shouldn't go to $3. My impression, my comment is based on everyone needs to feel the pain. Like, in other words, the private lot guys that are making 50 grand a year, that are paying
But
us,
there's some other pain you haven't
3,000.
talked about.
What's that?
And that is, I don't use that lot, I don't park. I'm subsidizing it. Because if the $2 isn't covering it, the general fund
But it's like
covers the
the
rest.
schools.
Well, no,
It's
But the general fund
Park-
hasn't covered a penny of it.
parking retained earnings is covering
Parking
the
Yeah, it
rest.
hasn't been- yeah,
But
that's a big
where
difference.
Parking retained earnings is really down to like $100,000 or so. We can't, if we're going to do something long-term, we can't keep charging $2
Yeah,
and paying
I
$3.
don't disagree. My point is, the people who are paying $200 and that are charging $15 a day, $200 and $6 a space once, so they're paying probably, $5,000 or $6,000, and they're making that back in less than a week. All I'm saying is, if the town residents go up, then maybe it should go from 2 to 4. I'm not saying go from 200 to 200,000. I'm just saying, maybe the air's fee should go from 200 to 400, and it should go from 6 to 12 for a, because they only pay that once per year.
Hang on, though, they must pay property taxes.
Yeah, but it's empty lots.
Yeah.
It's
There's not much.
So
So
it's
it's not
it's
based on-
lower than a house or
No,
something.
It's lower than a house.
it's based on a lot.
It's just
There's
be
a lot of
land.
value
Just an
in
empty
those
land.
lots.
It's just land.
It's
You would,
land.
you
It's
would
the
have,
value
on
of
your
that
tax, you have
particular
land and
It's
building?
improved land, though.
Then
Not
they
really.
consider it improved.
And I would just add
I'd
one
have
co-
to check, I don't know.
Scott,
if-
I'd be very careful making that argument that you don't see benefit. It's just like a good school system,
Hey,
it's like
No,
roads.
again, that argument
No,
was made last night.
he made
and
a
I'm
mis-
making it
he made a
myself.
mistake, because whoever made that argument is wrong based on what John said.
Okay.
Because the
But it
town's not
still is-
subsidizing. Who made that argument last night?
Well, yeah, but if, what happens, John, if we ran through
But we're
all
not
of
through it,
that
though.
retained earnings?
But we're not through it.
But, okay, with about 100,000 left, if we ran through it, what happens?
What happens if we run through our stabilization fund? I mean, the point I'm making is, I get the fact that we're doing this to get ahead, because we're spending down that at a faster rate when they dropped it from 4 to 2, 4 or 5 years ago. The only point I was making is that it needs to be equitable, that's all.
If this is going to be a revenue generator for the
Right.
town, we should tap all sources in that. I think.
Well, I think we should at least review it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then make some
Yeah,
decisions.
definitely.
I mean,
Right
we don't
now,
even have
it's-
got to the
the thing
point
is,
of
it's not a
even
revenue
looking at it.
generator. Right now, it's not holding its own, I think, is the best way to put it, John.
Yes.
And if it doesn't hold its own, and that runs through,
But you mi- you- but you
then
mi-
it hits the
again,
general
we're missing
fund.
My opinion is, I understand why we need to go to 3. Maybe it needs to go to 4, but they want to go 3 and then 4. I get that. My point is, as a member of the finance.
Actually, 4 they don't. Well, at least the selectmen were
Okay.
not in favor of
On
that.
my.
Right now.
Right now, but just hear me out. My point is, if you're a selectman, I would want to make sure that it was equitable across the board. I would want to make sure that, if I was a selectman that voted for this, that if the town people went up 50%, then that permit went from 200 to 300, and that per-car spot went from 6 to 9, because they're only paying it once. And, because those people are charging $10, $12, $15 a day, Scott. They're making, which is fine, it's capitalism, but my point is, it should be reflective of what everyone's paying. That's
I
all.
mean, we
It's
should
not
look at,
about
we
whether
should look at the
raise it.
return on,
Yeah.
the ROA on,
And it
return
may
on
only be
investment.
peanuts, 200 to
We
400
have
is
no
not
idea
a
what
lot of
they're
money,
getting.
but it's just the point that
Yeah.
if everyone else's has to go up, why does the revenue?
And I understand that point. My point would be, I look at that total, I look at our lots and what we're doing is totally separate from someone's doing as a business. If ours isn't supporting itself, if the parking enterprise doesn't support
You
itself.
missed my point again.
I got your
I
point.
agree with you on it. I agree with you on the parking enterprise. I
But
agree with you.
What I'm saying is,
just
I don't
saying-
think the other point's relevant. I think all that matters is if the parking enterprise doesn't support itself, then that has to change regardless of what happens to anyone else's
So,
lot.
so
Yeah,
so
but
if I own a
that,
lot,
the other part is part of the equation, though.
The
You
other
just
part's
can't
private.
look at it in a vacuum.
But it's private.
but they drive,
Doesn't matter.
600 cars are coming into Clemmy's lot every single day riding on our roads.
Right.
But as we said,
Okay, so
one of
that's-
those, if someone just signed their new, okay, when do they sign up again? How long is their?
Till
It's
next
a
year.
yearly permit.
So what, we wait
Next
till
spring.
next year?
Yeah.
We have no choice now because
No,
they signed.
no, we absolutely, we don't have to wait till next year. The whole idea of saying it should be, I mean, I understand the argument, you're saying, okay, yeah, we should make this fair, we should charge those people more too, but it's still an entirely separate issue from the town-owned lot and whether it's supporting itself. These are two separate things, whether we raise the fees for the town or whether we change the agreements and have new agreements with the people running the lots are separate issues.
They're separate, but they're linked.
Yeah, I don't think we're disagreeing with the fact that they're not
It's
in the
part
same
of-
bucket, but
It's
you
part
still
of the
talk.
math, it's
yeah.
part of the equation. I mean, what we're getting for that goes into the funds. So, I mean, if we doubled it and tripled it, so we charged them 100,000, it would certainly would help retain earnings, wouldn't it?
No, that would not go into parking, it
It's
would not at
separate.
all, it goes to general fund.
General fund, parking,
It doesn't touch
parking fees, I'm sorry, not parking fees. This type of parking permit goes to the general fund.
Did you change the permits wording to get it to go to the parking account?
We would have to change the article wording
I'm not saying for this year, I'm saying,
Next
but if
year.
you wanted to, you could do that, right?
and direct certain revenues into an
Well, then,
enterprise
yeah,
fund.
then
You
it's,
could, if you truly want to make it self-sufficient, everything that has to do with parking, everything that has to do with the roads around there
Goes into
goes into the same bucket, because you're paying the police, you're plowing, all that stuff is all intertwined.
What if you have a parking lot down near Xfinity?
I mean, that's all the stuff
That-
you have to weigh out. I get it. I saw the thing that they paid $200 too.
They pay the
I
same.
get it.
You can't,
it's
yeah.
not that we don't understand what you're saying, we do. All we're saying is that, if, this is also part of that equation in analyzing the whole parking issue. That includes both private and non-private, or public, whatever way you want.
I mean, I don't see it as, I don't see the concept of the discussion of it, or discussion of those fees as
Okay.
holding up the idea of raising what's
so
happening in the
let's-
resident lots, going from 2 to 3, especially if we're gonna be spending a couple $100,000 on those
I think
lots
I-
to try to improve them.
I think what we're also seeing is, and part of the reason this has come up, is there's been some confusion, there's been some of FinCom feels that we haven't gotten the information, maybe it got distributed and we just missed, because there's so many papers going out, there's so much information going out, it could have been missed. That's part of the reason driving the conversation, is we felt we were in the middle of discussing this, and then
Yeah, I think.
it just wasn't, the loop wasn't closed.
I think food for thought for next year, because this is kind of, and I know it's Kevin's first year, is I'm uncomfortable that the selectmen approve it before we approve it. But it is what it is, because there's no major issue in this
Right.
budget. It's balanced, there's no problem. I think next year, we have this meeting a week earlier, before Kevin goes to the selectmen, so we can at least have the discussion on the $3 fee and on the financing and stuff like that, so we can approve it before it goes, or we can get the answers to it. So,
I agree.
okay, so which one, that's Article 3, does somebody want to make a motion?
Article 4
Article
was
4,
the,
excuse me,
the,
somebody
Can you make a motion for can you do one motion for all of Article 4, or do you have to do one
you could
for
just
each?
approve Article 4.
Yeah, I think
all
we-
four.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
why don't we
should-
go through?
Without breaking it down to the,
Yeah, no, why don't we just approve, basically, they're the enterprise funds.
right,
Yep.
okay.
So I move we recommend for Article 4, motions 1 through 4.
Second.
Questions? No more questions, all right. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Article 5 is the transfers within the budget for fiscal year 18. and
But
then
you're
any-
avoiding by doing the thing before for next
Yes.
year.
And
Okay.
then the new appropriations, and the new appropriations are just to pay for snow and ice. The snow and ice deficit right now is 355, and we're not sure about that final amount yet, so that, right now.
Is that because we might get more snow?
No, it's because we have to make sure we get every bill.
All the bills.
Because this is a one-time thing of being able to fund it. And then the airport needed an extra $5,000 out of the airport enterprise. So I don't know if you want me to go through all the reasons
No,
why the
that's- no,
appropriations,
no.
but these are just inter-budget transfers.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion on that?
Intra-budget transfers.
I move we recommend for Article 5, as described.
Second?
Oh, second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Article 6?
Article 6 are unpaid bills. Unpaid bills are things from prior fiscal years. You can't pay prior fiscal year bills with current fiscal year money without an approval at town meeting. At a special town meeting, it has to be a 9/10 vote. At an annual town meeting, it has to be 8/10 vote.
So these are typically bills that didn't come in on time, came in after, and they weren't able to pay them.
At the end of the year, we ask for all the bills that everyone knows that remain unpaid.
And you
we
encumber the money.
that amount. And these are ones that no one knew were out there or missed, or got missed.
What's up with the shoes?
It's part of the union contract. We buy their work boots.
We buy work boots.
Oh, okay.
Good question, though. Okay.
Can I ask one quick question on the airport enterprise? Every year, do they run a deficit that the town has to pay for?
No, the airport enterprise is
Self-supporting.
It's
self-supporting.
self-supporting?
Yeah, they rent the condos, it's the fees they charge and stuff.
Okay,
But we move
They
the money.
have positive retained earnings.
okay.
That's actually how they do their capital projects. Like, if you look at the capital, that's all coming out of the retained earnings.
Of
everything they're
theirs.
doing. Yeah.
Okay.
In the microscopic print on here, it says how much retained earnings they have down the bottom if you.
That's why we missed the that's why we missed the $2 to $3.
Does
John
MedFlight go
shrunk it
into-
down.
Does MedFlight, the new MedFlight, does anything we get from them go into that?
I don't know what our arrangement is with them, with the airport, like how much rental, or does MedFlight get some special deal or something?
The Airport Commission and MedFlight did make a deal. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it will go to their fund.
It just goes into theirs, okay.
Somebody want to make a motion? Scott?
I move, we recommend Article 6, the unpaid bills as described.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. 7 and 8?
Articles 7 and 7 was a 5-year revaluation of all town properties. Usually we use closed articles for that, and there wasn't enough money to do that, so we're going to pass over the Article 7 and try to do it at the fall town meeting if there's $25,000 or so. That's what it usually
Okay.
And
costs.
same for what, 8, too?
And 8 is the 10-year cyclical inspection. So the 5-year revaluation is kind of a statistical, true-up over, it used to be 3 years and now it's 5, where the cyclical inspection is, which used to be 9, is now 10, is where someone actually goes out to your door, knocks on the door, checks how many bathrooms you have, checks if you have a swimming
If you decide to let them
pool.
in.
And if not, then they have to guess from the street.
So why don't we move on to Article 9 then?
Okay, so just real quickly, because these things are large numbers, we put small amounts in every year, and we just haven't been, we don't have
Yeah,
50
the
grand.
idea was not having to pay $300,000 in one pop. It was to be able to pay
Yeah, so
50
those are
grand a
both
year for
accruals
6
that you're not
years.
gonna do, and you're gonna look in the fall to do.
To try to do
But
it,
we're
yes.
going to try. However, again, should we have a problem with fall town meeting, that means,
We missed a
next year,
year.
we've lost a year, so either we try to do more each year or do a catch-up, or, if we don't want to be stuck with a big bill, we either reapportion or catch it up one way or another, so.
So Article 9 starts the, I'm sorry, did you move, you don't have to take any action.
No, we have to take
on
any
that.
action.
Okay. Article 9 starts the capital projects, the capital improvement plan. Article 9, motion 1, are town projects that are being funded from free cash.
Okay. Article 2 is school projects.
Motion 2 are school projects being funded by free cash. Motion 3 is the $660,000 borrowing, and
That's the Plymouth Street.
yes, that's for Plymouth Street, and I'm trying to find my cheat sheet, I can't find it, but
I think motion 4 is the fire engine,
the fire engine for $660,000.
5 is 360 for
360
Memorial
for
Hall.
Memorial Hall. 6 is the 3.4 million for both the roads and the bridge work that we've talked about earlier. Motion 7 is $500,000 for
So 6 will be taken as a bond.
yes.
Okay.
Motion
Yeah.
set, sorry.
It's 3, 4, and 5 that would be short-term, hopefully paid off.
Yes.
Okay, so motion 7?
Motion 7 is $500,000 for this is Water Enterprise for Albertini Well Treatment Plant Transmission Main Repair. They are going to borrow, and they do have the.
And
they have
that's the water or sewer, that goes to water and sewer,
Just from
right?
the water department.
Yeah, okay. Water.
They have the money to pay that. Motion 8 is some of the things that we're paying from the closed articles. And these are all, so the first, it says capital improvement projects to be funded now, the $176,500, which is on your capital project list under Article Turnbacks.
Why wouldn't that be in motion, part, the DPW highway salt shed be part of motion 6?
Because this is coming off of closed
'Cause
articles.
we're not borrowing it.
Yeah, we're not borrowing
Funding.
it. This is
For
closed.
Funding, it has to
Got
be
it,
here.
okay.
Yeah, so articles are broken up in a couple of different ways, either by department or by funding source, right, John?
It's town, it's usually funding source, free cash town, free cash school, borrowing, closed
Yeah,
articles.
but then you could also have borrowing by the water, the sewer,
And
the
depending
electric.
on- yes.
Depending on the department, yeah.
There is a method to it, even though it doesn't seem like there is. And these are all the closed general fund articles of where that money's coming from. That adds up to 196,000.
Yeah, so what
Sorry,
this- so what this means to you guys is,
176,500.
we might have, I'm making up a number for this, public library carpet, we might have authorized 100,000, and they spent 94,000. So the rest of it falls back. Once the project's completed and closed and approved, the money then falls back into free cash, and we typically redeploy it, into, not free cash, into another funding source. We close it and redeploy it to something for this year.
if I certify the project's completed, then we can do something with it. The town meeting can shift it to another purpose.
It
Motion
does- I
9,
just had a quick question. So when something closes in school, it could be, and we close it, it could be repurposed for something beyond school. School doesn't have to stay with school, it can go anywhere once it's closed?
yes.
Okay.
Well, but we try to be fair about it and say if
Right.
they saved money, the schools saved money, the school
Try to
gets
give
the
them as
money
much back as possible.
You know, sometimes you can't.
As close as you
As close as you
They
can,
usually
yes.
have enough capital projects, that's not a problem.
Right, okay. I just wanted the mechanism.
Motion 9 is sewer enterprise retained earnings for Mill Street Substation rehab. Motion 10 is water from retained earnings, doing meter and radio reading, and they're doing a little bit of the opportunity well from retained earnings. Motion 11 is the airport, they're 16,727, and that's all coming from their retained earnings. Motion 12 is the $200,000 we were talking about earlier, where parking enterprise is coming from parking retained earnings. It's for parking improvements, and I'm not sure, we are going to have a list of improvements, but we don't have that yet. And that's it, sorry. So there's 12 motions in Article 9. That's the capital improvement plan in motion form.
I move that we recommend
Can
for
we,
Article.
because do we,
This is gonna become a mess right now, because I know where you're going with this.
well, can we just break out the ones we have concerns with? It's only 3 or 4. It's.
Yeah, I know, but it's tough to vote part of an article. You either vote the whole article or you don't vote the whole article. That's the problem now.
Then can we hold off on voting the article?
Which one do you have an issue with?
Well, it's the, what was it,
What motion?
I'm looking to do,
He has issues with Article 3, 4, 5, and 6 based on the financing and all of that, right? Not
Yes.
so much 6, because the 3.4 is being bonded, right? 3, 4,
it was only, what was it, 3 of them?
3 of them,
3, 4, and 5. It's the.
It gets messy, either, my recommendation would be either vote the entire thing.
Right.
Or you hold the entire thing out versus I'm gonna vote.
Right, can we hold
one.
out the